All right, guys, we are back in my garage for another video, and today we are going to be upgrading the low pressure fuel pump on my 340i, because who would have thought I already ran out of fuel. And for those of you that don't know, when I posted my previous video going through my pump gas numbers, I was already in the process of tuning the car on ethanol. Then I had to go back to pump gas for my track day, and we went back to ethanol. And sure enough, before we knew it, we hit the limits of our fuel system, even with port injection already on my car. So in this video, we're going to upgrade the low pressure fuel pump, and while I'm installing it, I'm going to talk a little bit more about my experience and what happened when I ran into my fuel system issues, as well as what you should keep in mind in case you are planning on going this route, so you can avoid running out of fuel and just kind of have your car fully set up for your goals as you go into the custom tuning process. So let's go ahead and talk about it, and hopefully you guys find this video useful. Now, as always, for everybody that's new to the channel, I create these videos to help keep you updated on the latest developments in our community, as well as discuss technical topics so that we have a better understanding of how our engines work. So if you're interested in more videos like that, be sure to subscribe because there will be a lot more coming out in the future. All right, guys, so you know how this works. We're going to go ahead and do this install, and I'll just talk to you a little bit about kind of what I went through, my experience, and things that I recommend you consider if you're planning on your fuel upgrade setup. And this is one of those things, if you do it right, you should only have to deal with it once. So I get it. Thankfully, I have tuners that are a little more patient with me. So when I have an issue and tell them, I need 2 weeks to get some new parts and install it, they say no problem. When you get it all fixed, we'll get back to tuning. Just send us an updated log. But yeah, this is a good idea for those of you, especially if you're working with tuners that are very busy on a time crunch. Some people say you only have 30 days to get your tune done or whatever. Make sure your car is fully ready. This is going to be for you. So to start off, let's talk about my setup. So I have a 2016 340i. And the main thing is I have a Dynamic AutoWorks UltraFlow X Turbo. So in their new line of turbos, like their next gen, I think is what they're calling it, this is the smallest one. It'll spool the quickest, and it supports around 700 to 750 wheel horsepower, which is plenty for me because I'm sticking with the stock engine and stock transmission. For any of you that are in the same boat, this is pretty much the one I recommend because that's more than enough to overwhelm your transmission if you push it too hard. So I stuck with that one. It'll have the quickest spool, best driving manners for street use and daily driving, and I think it worked pretty well. I started tuning everything on pump gas, and I posted up those results. So hopefully some of you have seen that video already, and I kind of thought that was a good amount of power for track use. I used pump gas at the track, but I still wanted to run ethanol. I have ethanol readily available by me. This is annoying. Get out of the way. There we go. And, for street use and just fun, I wanted to tune it on ethanol. Now, I already have a motive reflex on the car. It has port injection set up with 750cc injectors. So, I went ahead, we set it up for E40. It's going to be a flex fuel tune. So just pumped E40 in the car and started running logs. And actually, after a couple weeks, maybe 2 weeks, I started hearing pop, 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 pop. And for anybody that's been tuning, you know what that means. Fuel issue. Ran out of fuel. And I was kind of frustrated at first, or just really surprised, I guess I should say, because we were still on E40. So yeah, it was just kind of one of those things where I knew I was going to need to upgrade the fuel system at some point if I wanted to push it further, but I didn't really expect it when I was only running E40. And so there were only a couple things that could cause that. One was when I was doing a pull in the low RPMs, it was fine. But as I got higher up in the RPM, it started breaking up. And a lot of you guys know it's probably time to upgrade your high pressure fuel pump if as soon as you get into boost, you start hearing that pop, pop, pop sound. That's a good indication down low around 3,000 to 3,500 RPM that you're hearing those misfires because your high pressure fuel pump can't keep up. Now with your port injection or low pressure fuel pump, you'll typically run into issues up top because the car is flowing so much fuel once you get up there, you basically have to have twice the fuel flow to make the same amount of torque down at like 3,000 RPM, for example. So that was the first indication that I was running out of fuel, and probably my stock low pressure fuel pump wasn't keeping up anymore. Now, the other thing, of course, and this is another testament to why I recommend Motive Reflex and MHD, is we could see it in my logs. You know, if I check my logs, I have the auxiliary fuel pressure sensor on my Motive Reflex, and this is exactly why I recommend it. Because when you're in a situation like this, you can literally just look at your logs and see that your low pressure fuel is dropping. Just like you monitor rail pressure to see if your high pressure fuel pump is keeping up, you can look and see if your low pressure fuel is keeping up by monitoring that auxiliary pressure sensor inside of your logs. And that's what we saw. Now, I was still kind of surprised, like, how could that happen? How much boost are we running? And I looked at my last log, and it was hitting like over 30 psi. So it's like, okay, that makes a little more sense, because at 30 psi, you're going to be pushing a lot of air, you know? And so that just kind of goes to show you, even on an ethanol mix, if your tune is requesting too much air, you can run out of fuel. And that's just kind of a part of the tuning process. You know, I think we were both kind of surprised, but these new turbos flow a lot of air, even at those boost pressures. And so, you know, it was enough to overwhelm even my fuel system with port injection. But yeah, again, this is just a reminder why you have to get that auxiliary fuel pressure sensor. Because the other thing is, after I upgrade this, if my new pump has an issue where it doesn't come on when it's supposed to, it's failing, whatever, we can set limits in the tune so that it'll automatically go into a safety mode and prevent the car from like leaning out, basically. It's going to monitor it just like it would monitor stock fuel pressure on our rail sensor, and make sure that we don't, you know, cause an issue that could cause the engine to blow. So very, very big supporter, recommender, proponent, whatever you want to call it, of that auxiliary fuel pressure sensor from Motive. It makes a huge difference, especially when you're pushing for higher horsepower levels. All right, it started getting hot, so I had to modify this with something to soak up my sweat. But before we go too far, I should mention we are installing a Fuel-It low pressure fuel pump assembly. So this is the 450 LPH auxiliary fuel pump attached to the stock low pressure fuel pump. This is the same one I have on my 440i as well. So if you guys want to see a full DIY, I'll have that link down in the description. I did that like over a year ago now, but you know, they've been supporting the channel for a while, and I do think that this is probably one of the best options, simply from an installation standpoint, because it's hard to get this whole assembly down in this hole, and they have a pretty creative solution for the bracket mounting and stuff. So I'll have a link to the product down there too, in case you guys are interested in going this route. But yeah, so at this point, we identified the low pressure fuel pump was the culprit and the main cause for my fuel issue. So got the low pressure fuel pump, and again, I just kind of thought this would be a good opportunity to talk about what you guys can pay attention to in case you're interested in going this far, because just because you're not running full E85 doesn't mean that you can't overwhelm your low pressure fuel pump. And a lot of people are doing stuff just saying, oh, I'm doing it for peace of mind and this and that. I think it makes more sense to at least understand what you're changing, so you can make an educated decision with what you're going to do. There we go. So first thing to consider, of course, is how much horsepower you want to make. And me, I was looking hopefully for like 600 to 650 horsepower, which the stock low pressure fuel pump is capable of on an ethanol mix. The main issue is once you get up to full E85, it's no longer capable. You know, the more ethanol that you run, the harder the fuel pump has to work, and so the easier it is to overwhelm it. So I would say if you're shooting for more than 600 on full E85, you're going to want a low pressure fuel pump. Kind of in general, if you're running out of fuel, direct injection only, and you're upgrading your fuel system to add port injection, a low pressure fuel pump is typically like right around the corner. So for me, I upgraded to port injection even on stock turbo, where I had plenty of room and I didn't have to worry about it. But with my big turbo setup, I didn't really have that gauge for, okay, now I've maxed out my door stage 2, so I'm adding port injection. and then we'll see how far this can go. In my experience, if you do that, you get maybe an extra 1 to 2 psi, not much, and then you're going to have to upgrade your low pressure fuel pump as well. So especially on full E85, that's a risk. But even as you can see in my situation, on an ethanol mix, if your turbo can flow enough air, you can definitely overwhelm your stock low pressure fuel pump. So for me, it's kind of about convenience. Since we're doing a flex fuel tune, I want to run full E85. I don't want to go back to calculating mixes anymore. It's definitely plenty capable, because 600 to 650 is a lot of power for most people. And honestly, I'm not sure how much power the car is making right now, but I feel like it's probably way above my goal. We'll see when we get on the dyno, hopefully soon, once we complete tuning. But yeah, this was just kind of one of those things where for me, I was not expecting us to overwhelm the stock low pressure fuel pump just on an ethanol mix. So depending on your goals, you know, figure that out. If you're in a situation like me, of course, you can also tell your tuner you don't want to push it that hard, you know, because you're staying on the stock transmission, or you only want 600 wheel or whatever. Tell them to keep it like in the high 20s, and your stock low pressure fuel pump should be good, again, on an ethanol mix. All right, this is the part that's not so fun. Trying to fit all of this in this little hole. So basically what you do is you drop the fuel pump in, the secondary pump, then you drop in the first pump, and get it all lined up. And you should just have to push the stock pump down onto the bracket holding the secondary pump. No matter what, it's a tight fit, but with a little bit of patience, you can get it on there. I like to just reach in there, make sure you have your gloves on, so you can line it all up. There we go. Yep, we got it.
What? Wait, already?
Yep. We tore Daddy's glove. Let's go get a new one.
Like right now?
Right now. But yeah, what was I saying? Basically, just plan out your goals. And I know that's not the answer a lot of you guys want me to say. You just want to know, oh, if I'm doing this turbo, do these upgrades. But it's really about what you want. For me, this is a lot of convenience that's driving this decision, because obviously on E40 I'm able to hit my goals, and when I go to full E85 I want to be able to hit my goals as well. I'm not planning on making more power on full E85. I just don't want to lose power, so I want to basically have a flat profile through my flex fuel tune so that I can make consistent power regardless of how much ethanol I'm running. So just keep that in mind as you're planning it out. Again, if you want 600-ish, you should probably be able to make that on full E85 with a stock low pressure full fuel pump. It kind of depends on the turbo and your AFRs and stuff like that too. But if you want more than that on full E85, or more than like 650 to 700 on an ethanol mix, then just know a low pressure fuel pump is going to be in your future. So I'm going to finish wrapping up this install. Thank you again to Fuel It for supporting my builds for so long. Let me double check everything's on. Yep, should be still good to go. But yeah, again, thank you to Fuel It for providing this low pressure fuel pump and supporting my builds for so long. And big shout out to all of you guys that are already making way more power than me. Obviously, our cars make it seem like it's an easy feat, but it's definitely a big challenge. A lot of time, money, energy to make this done. So I'll be sharing these ethanol results with you guys once we get back on the dyno and get some draggy numbers and all of that. But this should help us actually reach our goals. So yeah, I think that's it for this video. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope this helps. And if you have any other questions or comments, leave them down below. Sir.